Hello. Today we are going to make lamb shank stew. I've got 3 pounds of lamb shank. I've got a large onion that we're going to cut up. I'm going to use about 3 or 4 celery stalks. I've got 3 carrots. I've got a bunch of thyme. I've also got about 6 cloves of garlic. I like to do 2 per shank when they're this size. I'm going to use about 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. We're going to use salt and pepper to season everything up. And we're going to fill it up with some water. So the water measurement kind of depends on the size of your shanks, but it'll be just barely enough to cover once we put it into the slow cooker. So let's get started. All right, so we've got our pan heating up on a medium-high heat. I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You can use vegetable oil. If you don't have olive oil, it's not a prerequisite. We've already seasoned our lamb shanks with salt and pepper. That's all you need, because we're going to use thyme as our main herb. And I've got a good amount of thyme here that we're going to add in. Isn't that beautiful? Thyme is really hardy, so if you have, even if you just have a container garden, you can add thyme to your container garden. It's going to really do well. So we're just going to let that heat up for just a moment. And then we're going to add in the lamb shanks. So you want a big enough pot that can hold your lamb shanks. If you don't have a big enough one, just do it in stages, okay? So I've got my shanks going in, and even with this pot, which is fairly big, they're just going to barely fit. So it's going to be a little crowded, but it's not the end of the world. I may actually move this guy over here. Get this last one in. We just want to brown them on as many sides as possible. Okay, so I've got my insert right next to the pot here. So I've got my insert waiting to receive the lamb shanks as soon as they're browned. But I don't want it so close that it's going to get too hot. This should never be against actual flame. So I've got it moved off to the side a little bit, because I just want enough, I want it close enough that I don't have to finagle where I'm going to find it. All right, so in the meantime, we have to be patient and wait for this to actually come up and brown. It's going to take a few minutes to do that, which is, no big deal. Because our next step will be to remove the lamb shanks themselves, put them into our crock pot insert. We're going to add a little bit more oil. Then we're going to put in all of those vegetables that we cut up earlier. And then we're going to put in our tomato paste. And then we're going to put our liquid in. And then we're going to put it in the crock pot. So it's going to be one of those meals that you have to do a little bit of prep at the beginning, and then you can just kind of get about your day and let it cook slowly in the slow cooker. These are really big, and this guy got stuck. But you see how beautifully brown that got right there? That's what we're looking for. All right, so we're going to be patient, let things sit on the flame and get brown. All right, so now that all of the shanks are browned, I've got them in our crock pot. I'm going to add just a little bit of oil because there's not a lot in there. So maybe a tablespoon. And I'm going to add all of the vegetables in one go. So I want these to brown just a little bit. I'm going to leave them alone, other than adding a little bit of salt and pepper. And that's salt and pepper to taste. And we want these to brown ever so slightly, and that'll give us a little bit of caramelization on our vegetables, which is always a good thing. It brings out the sweetness, the naturally occurring sweetness in the vegetables. All right, so we'll give that a little stir so the oil can get on everybody. You can see that everything looks kind of glazed now, which is really pretty. And I'm going to add in the 2 tablespoons of tomato paste as well. Let's get that out of our container. Don't want to waste any of that. And we're going to stir that in. If you don't have tomato paste, you can use crushed tomatoes. You're just going to have to reduce the amount of liquid you put in, and the flavor may not be as intense. So we're going to let these guys heat up a bit more. I want to get all of that off of my tongs. Now, if you would like to have wine in this, you can add wine. I don't add wine. I tend to like wine with my beef stews. I don't put wine in my lamb stews. So we just give this a moment, and we'll add in our thyme as well. Got to let it cook. Sometimes the hardest part about cooking is the waiting and letting the heat actually do its job. And you'll notice I'm putting in the thyme just as one big bunch. Some of these little leaves will actually come off during the cooking process. They're very small, but I'll be able to pluck this whole thing out very easily. You can make a sachet out of cheesecloth and butcher's twine and tie it at the end, but I don't feel like I need to do that when I've got something this hardy. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. I'm going to give this a good stir. And now I'm going to add just enough water so that I can clean up and deglaze the bottom here. There isn't that much to deglaze in this case. But I also want to get the tomato paste to break down. So you need a little bit of liquid for that. I'll put just a little bit more. And this is just to get the tomato paste to become, liquid state. All right, that looks good. Okay, my next step is to get all of this into this container. So we're going to put everything in here now. So we'll turn that off. I'm going to get a big spoon. And that way we can scoop everything out. Get these tongs out of our way. Get all of our vegetables in here. Including our garlic and our thyme. So get every last bit of this out. All right, we're ready. So time to put it into the slow cooker. Okay, so turn off our hood system here and we'll add in our insert. We're going to clean this up just a little bit so we don't have any mess later. All right, we're going to turn on our slow cooker. I'm going to do it for 5 hours, but I'm going to put it on high just because of a timing thing for me. Normally I would put it on low for about 8 hours, but it's just a time thing. So we just set that up. So we're going to put it on high. All right, and I'm going to add my water. Like I said, you can use a bit of wine if you want, or even some chicken stock. These vegetables will also release liquid. So I think I have enough liquid in there. Put just a little bit more. It's almost to covering the top. Almost. And in 5 hours, we're going to see how lovely this is all turning out. I'm going to put a little bit of salt because we added water and the water is not seasoned. I'm also going to add a little bit of pepper. And we'll be able to adjust our seasonings at the end. But this will give everything flavor from now. Okay, so we'll be back in about 5 hours to see how this has turned out. Okay, our cook time is up. So I've turned off the slow cooker. You can see it's still bubbling in there. I'm going to go ahead and remove the lid. It smells so good. Oh my goodness. And this next step takes a little bit of patience and time. I've got a container I've got here in my hand. I'm going to get the 3 big pieces of lamb shank out of here. That's why it's good to remember how much you put in there. So I'm just going to gently use my tongs and put them into a Tupperware container just off to the side. And I say gently because they've been cooking for so long, it can fall apart. So you want to make sure you really have a good grip on it so it doesn't just splash right back into the pot and make a great big mess. We can get this thyme out as well at the same time because we're not going to eat it. It's just there for flavor. You can see how the meat has pulled away from the bone on both sides. This is really, really ready to go. Okay, so we've got that, and I'm going to just kind of put a little bit of a lid on it just to keep it warm. It's going to end up back in here. But my next step, literally, is to take the immersion blender and pulse right inside of the crock pot here to make all of these vegetables and herbs into a sauce. That's all it is. So you can leave it chunky if you'd like. I don't prefer that. I'm going to serve this over rice. And I'm doing small sections, and I lift it up. And then I make sure I can get some big pieces under there. And I'll repeat this until I get all of it done. So the meat literally falls right off the bone. All I have to do is pull on it and I can get the meat off the bone. So I'm going to take each piece and put it back into the pureed vegetables to keep it warm. And once I finish doing that, we'll be ready to put that into our plates and gobble this whole thing down. So I use my tongs because I'm just comfortable with them. But basically there's 2 bones in here because this is a joint. So I can just pull the meat off. And then once I get down to the bone, I'm going to basically discard them. So use a fork, use a knife, use something to hold the bone, whatever works for you. I happen to just use my tongs. So I'm going to do that process now. All right, we're ready to go. We're ready to put everything in our plate and eat this up. So I've made some rice here off to the side. It's just basmati rice. You can serve this with mashed potatoes. I like to have it with rice. I've had it with mashed potatoes too, but from a texture standpoint, it's all just mush over mush. So I like to have it with rice when I can, even when I drop some. All right, so we've got our rice. And now we're going to take our lamb, which you saw we put all the lamb pieces in here. I like to get a little bit of sauce first, and this is all the vegetables just pureed right onto my rice. And because the lamb is fork tender, I'm not worried about the size pieces that I put in here. You'll be able to do this with a spoon. It's not difficult at all. And because I like all of this, I don't care what pieces I get. There might be a little bit of cartilage that you get, depending on how you've pulled this apart. It's no big deal. Like I said, I love it all. All right, so there we have it. This is lamb stew with vegetables over rice. You give it a little hit of parsley to make it look beautiful. Try this. I think you're going to find that that's delicious.